4078. It's going to be this 1222, or correction, 1122 Queen Road up here. I got it. Hey guys, Moscow PD. Hey, turn the music down. Turn the music down. Hey guys, second time. I need somebody to come to the door. Music stays off. Party's over.
Party's over, guys. Welcome to transparency. Let's go. June 16, 2023. State's motion for protective order. The state did not rely on the IGG information to establish probable cause in the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. Yep, that's page 12. The state claims they did not rely on the IGG information to obtain the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. Again, page 12. The state did not rely on the IGG information to establish probable cause for defendant's arrest. The defense response, in my opinion, to this will be very simple. I try to break it down. Referring to the probable cause affidavit to arrest Bryan Kohberger, statement from Brett Payne, Exhibit A, his affidavit, you go to the last page. On December 27, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered trash. Based on the above information, I'm requesting an arrest warrant be issued for Bryan C. Kohberger. This is how you, as in the state, obtain the arrest warrant of Bryan Kohberger. In their motion, they're saying that the state has relied on and will continue to rely on the STR DNA analysis comparing defendant's DNA to the DNA on the sheath. And that it was not, in fact, due to, you down with IGG? Yeah, you know me. It was not to FBI's IGG efforts. After identification of defendant, law enforcement recovered trash from the home of defendant's parents and ISP laboratory did the STR DNA analysis of items from the trash for comparison to the unknown crime scene DNA. The state did not get the buccal swab from Bryan Kohberger until after his arrest. How did the state obtain an arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger? The FBI gave the name Bryan Kohberger to local law enforcement through a quote-unquote tip. Yes, the name Bryan Kohberger was the tip. What was the date of the tip? How was the tip submitted? What FBI agent submitted the tip? Was the tip before FBI took over lab work of the sheath to develop IGG family tree? The FBI set up their own tip line just a couple days into the investigation. The Idaho State Police utilized a private laboratory. Who from local law enforcement decided the FBI was going to take over this? What is the date of the SNP profile that ISP Lab developed from sheath? Again, they decided the FBI would take over, so the private laboratory ceased its efforts. The FBI built the family tree using the same tools and methods that the public can use. So then why did the FBI take over? This motion focuses on the FBI's IgG efforts. The IgG process pointed law enforcement towards defendant. The process. The FBI took it over, and they didn't record any of their work. All they had to do was hit copy, print screen. When was all of this going on? When, as in what date did the FBI obtain the name Bryan Kohberger from their family tree? Look at this was conducted by the Idaho State Police, not the FBI. So then the FBI hands it back over to ISP. After identification of defendant, law enforcement recovered trash from the home of defendant's parents, and ISP laboratory did STR DNA analysis of items from the trash for comparison to the unknown crime scene. That comparison indicated that the DNA found on the trash belonged to the biological father of the individual who left the DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. Then, pursuant to a search warrant, then they collected the DNA from the defendant. Since December 30th, 2022, myself, I've been asking, how did law enforcement get the name Bryan Kohberger? The FBI. Welcome to Truth and Transparency. Go back to Ann Taylor's initial discovery request. Don't worry, I'll help you guys. She wanted to know every search warrant applications, every single one of them, whether they were issued or not. And that request made Bill Thompson squeal through his response. Take a look. Request for discovery, January 10th. State's response, January 23rd. In this response, when Ann Taylor was asking about search warrants, number 10, to the extent that information exists regarding an informant who is not going to be produced as a witness, including recordings or written statements of an informant or that identify an informant, such information is not subject to disclosure, and the state asserts informant privilege under ICR 16G2. Dylan, were you told about those bushy brows? Again, when Ann Taylor asked, about all the search warrants that were either served or denied, number 10 was that response. And it was, we're invoking privilege if we have to here for informants. $17,000 tips. How many tips before this public inquiry? Ask the public for the wrong car. Flood the tip line. Now, here we go. This was Ann Taylor's initial discovery. A lot of boiler points in here. But when you scroll down to see what Ann was asking for, that caused a little twist in the panties, right here, number 10, search warrants. Search warrants is what Bill Thompson responded to with invoking privilege for an informant. Again, she wanted them to provide all documentation, applications for search warrants, whether granted or denied, the declarations and materials in support of such search warrants, all search warrants, and all search warrants returns and their inventories. That discovery request is when Bill Thompson said he was ready to invoke privilege for an informant. I am looking forward to Ann's response. Home Team Productions, Truth and Transparency. How we doing? Any questions? What is good? How we doing? It all comes kind of full circle here. It's been being asked and said, and how do you get to Bryan Kohberger? How do you get to Bryan Kohberger? We know no bushy brows got to Bryan Kohberger. How do we get to Bryan Kohberger? Well, guys, the FBI served Bryan Kohberger on a silver platter, his name. And it's like a math problem that you get the right answer, allegedly, but you don't have to show any of your work. What happens to you in math class? You don't get credit for that answer. If you don't show your work, you get the answer wrong, even if you get the answer right. You have to show your work. So, what is up, Drunk Tookie? Good to see you guys in the house. At the end of the day, whether Bryan is innocent, is guilty, whether any other case out there, okay, the FBI is claiming, well, through the state, that they did not document anything that they did to come up with and how they got to this family tree and how they got to Bryan Kohberger, and that basically all they are doing is we are just taking a tip from the FBI saying that it's Bryan Kohberger. Like, they just provided that name. It's just like a tip. That's all we treated it as. What? You guys were passing back and forth through the ISP lab to the FBI, back and forth doing this handling of DNA. Okay. But at the end of the day, FBI knows they've been involved with how many cases that all you have to do, you're doing all this and you're not going to be documenting in such a high profile case that you take this over. Which I still want to know who, you want the custody of all of this chain of who made these decisions and why did the FBI take it over if it was just stuff that, anybody that's using 23andMe can do. So you have to show your work. We all got wrong answers in math class when we didn't. Here, a guy's life is on the line. And now they're trying to say that, well, we didn't use any of the stuff that they did, and that's not part of discovery, and yada, yada, yada. And they're claiming a bunch of, citing case law and all that good stuff. But why wasn't screw all that. Why wasn't the FBI documenting their stuff? Why? I mean, who would it's all you have to do is you could take screenshots of your computer as you're working. You print stuff off as you're going. You're building this family tree for this international case that's just consumed. I mean, when did this process start? Okay. The FBI, so if I'm Anne, my arguments, I think that you can go a couple different ways. But wait, what? The FBI didn't check their work? I would love to see this tree. See all the names on here. But why did FBI take that part of it over to begin with? And if you read the documents, it's a big cluster. Do we need to see any of this? No. Should the defense? Yeah. We don't know if it's exculpatory or not. They don't know. We don't need to see any of that. A protective order so that Bryan Kohberger doesn't know who his family members are? What? What are you talking about? We don't need to see shit. I don't care if I ever see this documentation in my life. Okay? But you got to go back to the beginning, though. And when Ann Taylor put in her discovery request and she was asking about, hey, she wants to see these search warrants. She wants everything to do with these search warrants, even the search warrants that didn't come, they just, weren't accepted. Even those, you want all these applications. And this is what launched all of this, is that based on Ann's requests, the state came out with, here we go. I will put it up here. I think I marked all of this. Okay. Let me make sure this is sharing on your guys' end. Okay, yeah, that's fine. There you go. A little bit bigger for you. Oh, just erase that. But what they're basically saying is that Idaho had it first, and Idaho created the Idaho State Lab, like ISP had it, and they're the ones that created, and you're only going to know this when you need to have all the dates, okay? They're the ones that created the profile right here. SNP profile is different than an strNDNA profile and is used more often for this purpose. But it's basically being said that, hey, Idaho was doing this, Idaho State Lab, and in the process of doing this, they had already created this profile. So they already had it, okay? Then they shut down what they're doing because they're going to have the FBI take over. All right. And I believe, this is just my opinion, there is going to be no sheath on any body cams, because now allegedly where the sheath is located, it was next to the bodies of Madison and Kaylee. The sheath was face down and partially under both Madison's body and the comforter on the bed. Okay. So if it was under the comforter and under her body, like half and half, how could you possibly see a sheath if you're Officer Payne? Okay. So I think that they're going to have to explain that a little bit. because in his PCA, he could see the sheath. It was on the right side when looking from the door. And even if you couldn't see it from looking at the door from there, he never says that he saw or that he was told from ISP or anything like that. It doesn't say that he was later notified. He personally is saying that he knew that sheath existed. Okay. But the sheath was taken to the Idaho State Police lab. The ISP laboratory determined the DNA came from a single source and that the source was male. Once law enforcement had single source DNA from the K-bar, okay, they then conducted what is called a short tandem repeat. And so what they're trying to say is they're putting this in the order that they did it, that they did all of this, okay? And when they entered the DNA into CODIS, it came back no match, okay? Unable to find a match using, so I think there's going to be a lot of arguments with this sheath. Was it planted? So there's no blood on this sheath. So let's start with the sheath. And are there question marks about, do you actually want to go the route now looking in, okay, can any of these wounds been made by any other weapons? Is the knife possibly bigger than the sheath? And therefore that the sheath doesn't even match the wounds. But do you believe that this is planted? Or do you believe that this is legit? Okay. Because I was hoping that we would see body cam eventually at the trial, if there was a trial, and that this body cam would totally, like when first responders were there or the first officers, and that this would be on camera before anybody would have ever had the opportunity to mess with the crime scene. But now we know that 911, the time that they said this happened until 911 was called, well, shit, you had all that time. Okay. So, but I always said that, hey, it's funny how he mentions in the PCA that he used the body cam, okay, to locate where Murphy was when the cops were in there, okay, when they first arrived. And why can't you talk about where the sheath was on body cam? Well, because it's probably not there, because I think that they would have, because that would have been clutch for them. Okay. Anyways, so you have this sheath, and Mr. Gonzalez even slipped up a couple times talking about start using ancestry DNA. He was screaming during one of the the interviews, and just telling people, or just basically telling us about kind of that he knows that there's DNA, and what the heck, why aren't come on, start using this, the 23andMe, he was, yada yada yada. It's because he knew that this DNA existed. And I think somebody used the words that this guy was sloppy or something like that. So anyways, this is where it gets interesting though, so it's at the Idaho State Police Laboratory. This sheath, the profile that they created. Then all of a sudden, they were going to begin to use the 23andMe's, Ancestry.com, whatever. And this is what this is talking about. The same process used frequently by members of the public can also be used by law enforcement as part of their investigation, a technique referred to as investigative genetic genealogy, IGG. Family trees can be used to narrow down a potential suspect based on factors such as age, gender, opportunity, known physical, blah, 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 blah. But then here we go. So they're about to do this. ISP. In this case, right here, investigators used IgG to begin the process of developing a lead to the individual who left the DNA. The Idaho State Police utilized a private laboratory. I'm just curious on what the private laboratory was. Again, you're gonna know, like, what are these dates? Like, when did you begin to do this? Okay. To develop an SNP profile from the DNA. The private laboratory started using genetic genealogy to develop a family tree, started to do this. So is there some documentation of this starting process? Like sending this, okay, here, we sent this. I mean, how are we doing this? What's the chain? But so they said that the private laboratory started using this genetic genealogy to develop a family tree. But after law enforcement decided the FBI would take over, now my question is who decided that? Who came in and just said, hey, stop doing what you're doing, and the FBI is doing this? They're taking over. So that private laboratory then ceased what they were doing. Okay. And then they sent the SNP profile to the FBI. Okay, again, what are the dates? What are the timestamps of all of this? Who's calling this? Why would they just be like, stop, no. We're going to get that on over to the FBI. Well, why didn't you send it to them in the first place then? But why is the FBI being asked if it's just something that we, the public, can do? The FBI then uploaded the SNP profile to one or more publicly available genetic genealogy services, again, like those 23andMe's. Based on information the FBI could see in the Genetic Genealogy Services portal, the FBI went to work building family trees. Trees is plural. How many trees? Like I only knew that I was like one family tree. This is plural. How many family trees did the FBI build? Okay. This is the relatives to the suspect DNA left at the crime scene in an attempt to identify the contributor of the unknown DNA. The FBI built the family tree, now it's tree, using the same tools and methods used by members of the public. Okay, great. So it's how we would build it. All right. Who wish to learn more about their ancestors? For example, the FBI consulted social media, viewed vital records such as birth and death, blah, blah, blah. Okay. The FBI also consulted subscription-based databases available to law enforcement for information. Again, right here is what I highlighted in the video, which is this motion focuses on the FBI's IgG efforts. The state is also seeking to protect the partial family tree created by the private lab, and it should be protected for the same reasons the FBI's IgG efforts should be protected. Well, there's really nothing to protect because I thought there wasn't anything. The product of the genealogy conducted by the FBI was a family tree that contained the name, birth date, and death date, if applicable, of hundreds of relatives, as well as their family connections between each other and the suspect, Bryan Kohberger. Hundreds of relatives. I mean, I looked up Bryan's family, and I just didn't see that many people in his, that he had a bunch of family. So interested in that. The IgG process pointed law enforcement toward the defendant, but it did not provide law enforcement with substantive evidence of guilt. The FBI did not, for example, conduct a direct comparison between the SNP profile from the K-bar knife sheath and defendant's SNP profile. Okay. Again, I need a date on when they got to this point. What's the date on this? Okay. Because was Bryan in Washington or was Bryan in PA? I mean, what's the date on that? Why not just go grab his DNA somehow? That type of direct comparison required the more traditional STR DNA analysis, which was conducted by the Idaho State Police, not the FBI. Okay. Prior to the FBI's IgG efforts, and this is a big prior to, the ISP laboratory developed the traditional STR DNA profile from the DNA found on the K-bar knife sheath. This is really important because this is taking it back to say, see, we're going with the Idaho State Police and what they did, okay, and how they created what they created, and that we're not taking anything that the FBI did, all right, because why? I don't know. After identification of defendant, what does that mean? Like Dylan's identification of the defendant? Just kidding. After identification of defendant, law enforcement recovered trash from the home of defendant's parents. Well, guys, guess what? We know for a fact that on 11/29, okay, local law enforcement, they had Bryan Kohberger. They had his name, right? PCA, the WSU, they put out about the white Elantra on 11/25, allegedly to these, local law enforcement to be on the lookout for a white Elantra. Allegedly didn't give a year, and lo and behold, these two cats over there at WSU's campus, within 20 minutes of each other, they both find Bryan's white Elantra. Okay. They didn't get the trash. So when do we think that they got this DNA? How long do you think it took them to make this family tree and to get the name Bryan Kohberger? Because remember, they didn't get the trash until the 27th, and the FBI was the ones that got it. But they knew about Bryan allegedly on the 29th. Check this out, guys. Listen to this. They knew about Bryan Kohberger on the 29th of November, okay? Allegedly by this, hunting down this white Elantra, which I was saying, get out of town. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You might eventually get there. So when did the FBI give the name Bryan Kohberger? When did this happen? Because look at this. After identification of defendant, law enforcement recovered trash from the home of the defendant's parents, and ISP laboratory did STR DNA analysis of items from the trash for comparison to the unknown crime scene DNA. The comparison indicated the DNA found on the trash belonged to the biological father of the individual who left the DNA. I'm surprised that they want to say who left. On the K-bar knife sheath. Pursuant to a search warrant, law enforcement then collected. So pursuant to a search warrant. See, so the search warrant included getting the trash and all of that. That's what it was. To be able, when you had the trash, okay, and then you went ahead and I don't know how you passed that all the way to boom, boom, boom. You have this profile, but that's all in the search warrant to obtain the search warrant to arrest Bryan Kohberger. Okay. And then that's when they collected the DNA. And then everybody's going like crazy about this statistical match. Well, it came from this process. Why didn't they get Bryan's DNA in Washington? Okay, continuing on. Now, check this out. That's just funny. You guys, there's never been a debate that there's DNA on the sheath and that this DNA, like, we already knew all of this. This was in the PCA. So everybody that's going ham over, oh my God, see, it's a match. Well, we knew it was a match from the PCA. The PCA said it was a match, right? What I wanted to know is, I can't wait to see this body cam, to see this sheath. We're not going to see that because I don't believe it exists. And then what I was waiting to hear about is, okay, where's all this blood in this car, man? Well, the genealogy conducted by the FBI resulted in a lead that pointed law enforcement to defendant, but it did not result in the creation of many documents or records. Much of the information relied on by the FBI was only viewed through the user portal in the publicly available genetic genealogy service or services and other investigative databases. You're going to sit here and tell me that anybody that looks at this and says, wait, what? What do you mean you don't have any of these documents? How many times does the FBI do this? How many times do you think the FBI? So you're going to go find cases where the FBI has done this, and what have they done to show their work? And I hope they have that. Don't be cray-cray. I've never thoroughly washed my car wearing rubber gloves. Has anyone else? Yeah, I do it all the time when I wash my kitchen floor. I hate prune hands. But if you already know that people are out to try to, frame you for something, yeah, I'd be one paranoid person. That's just me. So what are these other cases where the FBI has been involved in something like this and that they just didn't show their work? Where, isn't that crazy? I guess I struggle with that. I struggle with do you think that they were flipping out on each other? What do you mean you don't have any of this work? I don't know. We just started plugging away at stuff and what? Well, how do you normally do it? You don't ever show your work for this? Well, I don't know. But, do you think that people were going nuts on each other? This is the FBI. The FBI took this over. This is think about what we do when we put our family trees together. We're taking pictures of everything, printing out everything, making some big collage to give to our family. Oh my God, here, Mom and Dad, happy Father's Day, happy Mother's Day, or, Merry Christmas. I did our whole family tree. Look at all of this. I printed out all of this stuff. Look at this, look at this, look at this. What? That's a Christmas gift. That's for Mother's Day, Father's Day. I have all of this. All this documentation to show how we built this, gosh, right? Here, biggest murder case, quadruple murder, and we got no we don't even know that answer. And then these dates are going to be so important. Remember, guys, I thought this was some like piece of human garbage, incel, stalker, super jealous, like, you know, I want what they have, so sloppy, you know, left his DNA, left his sheath, what a fucking moron, drove around on every camera, so stupid. Well, only thing I see not looking too bright here is if this guy is such a jackass and such an incel, piece of shit, garbage human being, well then, hey guys, let's just do everything by the book and get this motherfucker. Well, hi Mod Squad. This is why you do everything the right way. This is why they teach you fundamentals with like sports. If you have really sound fundamentals and you do stuff the right way, when it's like something that's just like minimal and so small, like even if it's like a traffic stop, or, you know, if you're just used to doing everything the right way and you don't cut corners and you just do things the right way, that's what you call that. Like, you're just fundamentally sound. They're just so crisp. They're, you know, that's what breeds good athletes. People that actually have that talent, that's what breeds the athleticism out of them when they have the good work ethic and when they're doing things the right way. That's all this is. And so it just blows my mind that it has nothing to do with the DOJ tells you to take something out. It has nothing to do with the process in recording your process of how you got to something. Hell yeah, get it out of there. That's protocol, right? You didn't mess that up. But the DOJ does not say, hey, by the way, when you're doing all of this, don't document it. That's not in the DOJ. Okay. That's not in there. Okay. Wiping it out. Sure. Great. Awesome. But the process on getting there and documenting it. If I was a parent and this came back, and I'd be like, what the you said this dude's sloppy and he does all, and then over here, this is the work you guys are doing? This is the work you did? I'd be pissed. That's how I'd feel. Again, the FBI did not download or create copies of those records. Why? If you're a judge, why? Is that normal? Is this normal? Once defendant was in custody, the FBI removed the SNP profile from the. So wait, how long did you leave it in then? How long was it left in? So why did you because you already had it, right? When was it created? How long did it stay in there? I mean, this is all going to be so important. Will you let it stay in for like a month and then you took it out right after the arrest? Why? You didn't think that you don't want to say like, hey, we need to get all this stuff. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an FBI agent. I don't know. But I just can't imagine that there is no, or that the DOJ says you can't document as you go. I think it's just not going to be possible. Again, this means, they're saying that this is DOJ policy. Yeah, but but how about this? This shit up here of you just not, this is like the math class. How did you get to -6, Lana? I copied off of Tommy. I mean, what do you mean? I've been paying attention. I can just do the work in my head. Poof, -6. Here you go. Is it right? Well, yeah, all of your answers are right, but you have no work to show for any of this. And this is like No work. Actually, you missed 2. They're the same that Tommy missed over there. And he sits right next to you to the left of you. We missed the same 2. Oh, gosh. What a coincidence. This means the FBI no longer has access to view much of the information it used to create the family tree and cannot view it again without resubmitting the SNP profile. No. Resubmitting the SNP profile, that's not how you, like, just because you resubmit that, you still have like the work to like build it. You would still like, just because you resubmit the SNP profile, that doesn't mean they would be the same outcome. Like everything would be the same in your process. Come on, haven't you? I just, wow. That's not true. To the state's knowledge, the only record that reflects the FBI's efforts, well, I think it's a big F for effort, to create defendant's family tree is the family tree itself. Maybe some notes jotted down by FBI agents as they constructed the family tree, and any records created to document the removal. This is all going to be dated, time-stamped. The state has not seen, nor does the state possess, these records or copies of these records. The state seeks a protective order, this is the argument, for a narrow category of information, namely information related to the use of IgG in this case. Everything to do with IgG that the FBI did, protective order. And you can see and read, the different reasons why that can happen. They're willing to give certain things up. You can go ahead and read about that. Again, they're citing some different case law. I want to show you my favorite part of this, though. They believe that it's not exculpatory, and I don't think they're going to win on that. But you don't know if it's exculpatory or not. We don't know who's on the list. Somebody on the list could have went to the University of Idaho and killed before. Somebody on the list could have been in the area at the time of the murder and been friends with the victims on social media. You don't know who's on that list. But again, this is my opinion only, is that if you go back to the beginning of this, and immediately when Ann wanted the search warrants, okay, Bill Thompson came back and was like, he started talking about informant, that we're going to be invoking privilege on this informant. Okay. Now we get to this point where you need to compel this. And then boom, here's Bill Thompson saying, this is the information that she wanted us to give back, in the first go around with discovery. And I'm like, well, that was about an informant. You went crazy about an informant. And is this their way of trying to get around this whole informant, that because the FBI just handed Bryan Kohberger's name on a silver platter and said basically like, here's the name Bryan Kohberger. This person cannot testify in any capacity. It will blow up what we're doing. And we've been doing this for, a ton of years, and we're trying to do X, Y, Z. And I believe that Bryan Kohberger has been so honest with Ann Taylor to everything and anything that he has been involved with, what's been going on, because that's the only way that I believe Ann Taylor is able to defend him to this type of capacity. If you have a defendant that just sits there and says to you, listen, I didn't know these people, I didn't kill these people, I am innocent. And that's it. And just is like, I don't know what to tell you. Ann doesn't know what to do. And I mean, she does, but she, like, if you are laying stuff out, like, left and right of like, listen, you're giving it to her so that she can help you. This is why they say don't lie to your lawyer. Tell your lawyer everything, because they can't defend you. They can't defend your rights. So I believe if you look at everything, and the way that this is all panning out, going back and forth like this, I just believe that Bryan is instrumental in this, in his defense, because he is telling Ann Taylor things. And in turn, she's then able to understand and do things. Like, Bryan, why would your DNA be on that sheath? What do you think he's going to sit there and say? I have no idea. Well, that doesn't help me. Who have you been hanging out with, Bryan? Who would have had your DNA? Do you know any of these people? What's been going on? You attempted to try to get this, why don't you, hey, your DNA is on this sheath. How is your DNA on this sheath? Boom. Now you're going to get to, do you think that Ann asked him that? What's interesting is where the DNA is, in my opinion, and that the DNA is not able to be seen on any body cam. Then you find out that, oh, wait, here, now the FBI doesn't know how they got there, or they don't have this work. They just, boom, they just have this family tree that they just made from what? How they comprised it, nothing. But if he's able to communicate a lot of things to her, that's how he can be defended. And that means you're going to have to come clean with anything that you may have been doing. If you were, hey, yeah, I was buying drugs, or hey, I was an informant, I was working with, somebody on this, that, or other, or I uncovered this, that, or the other. Hey, this person, whatever the case may be, I believe that communication's there, and I believe that in order for Ann Taylor to do her job to the ability that she's doing right now, Bryan's just not sitting there saying, I didn't do this. Well, we know that the sheath only has a single source of DNA. The sheath has no other DNA on it. There's just one single source of DNA, and it is a male. It comes from a male. That's how this all started. And remember now, if I'm Ann, I'm thinking, Bryan, you just got to WSU. Like, you just got here. You just started school here. Have you ever been here before? Like, why would anybody want to frame you? Like, why you out of, like, why not, somebody from Sigma Chi, or, how does that happen? So this is that I would love to be a fly on the wall of the strategizing with this, because there does still come into play with strategizing with this, because if you do believe that somebody was set up and framed, I mean, how do you go about that? Hey, he was framed, Your Honor. My client's framed. Like, that's not how it works. But I think this should prove to everybody, at the very least, that we can agree to disagree all day. Bryan's guilty. Bryan's not guilty. Who cares about that right now? Look at what you're looking at right now. This is wild. And if it's not wild, Go out there and get me a bunch of case law that shows that the FBI was involved with doing this type of work where they just didn't document anything. Let's take a look at this part. Well, the question of whether IgG information must be disclosed as exculpatory is one of first impression in Idaho. Courts outside of Idaho have correctly decided that IgG information need not be disclosed as exculpatory. They're going to come back and recite that a different way, I believe. Right here. The information provided to local law enforcement, you guys, this is what they're saying. The information provided to local law enforcement by the FBI was nothing more than a tip, a lead for local law enforcement to follow up on, should they choose to. What? You guys took, what? I cannot right now. You took out of the hands of ISP and said, hold up, we're going to have the FBI do this genealogy stuff, send it over to them, even though they were in the process, they had started up at the Idaho State Laboratory, okay? Okay, nope, halt, stop. Send it on over, give it to the FBI. The FBI does it, but doesn't put anything, doesn't cite anything. Now, the state's saying that all the FBI did was give us, they just give us a tip, man. It was nothing more than a tip, a lead for local law enforcement to follow up on should they choose to. What? This tip allowed local law enforcement to focus their investigation on defendant. Okay, what's the date? The tip allowed local law enforcement to focus their investigation on defendant. Okay, so when did you focus your investigation on this defendant based on this tip? Why is none of this in the PCA? Oh, God. When did they exactly, Lana? What I just don't understand. When did they focus their attention? Like, no, like this tip, basically this tip, you guys know what the tip is? The tip is, here you go, Bryan Kohberger. And what I believe is that, is this a way that they're saying that this happened to not have an informant have to testify? Again, this tip did not prove the defendant's guilt. Okay, rather, the tip allowed local law enforcement to focus their investigation on defendant. Exactly. That's how you were able to say, okay, let's tell frickin' frack on WSU's campus to go searching and hunting for a 2015 white Elantra. Like, it's like, here's the name. You have to work your way backwards to get here because you cannot use me. You cannot use us because it'll blow up what we've been working on. That's what this looks like to me. But hey, this was just rather a tip. All right. A tip is this. Is a tip, you handed over the dude's name. It's a pretty sweet tip. But you have no work to show for it and how you did it. Now that's a pretty interesting BK is toast. Yeah, he might be. If things keep going like this. I think you should care about your rights. Like I said, Bryan Kohberger maybe is guilty as sin, right? But we're told he's this um, incel stalker, sick person, blah blah blah. So yada yada yada. This is just flat out poor work then, but yet they were still able to manage to do it. I don't know. Specifically with respect to DNA, an STNR DNA analysis found the defendant's DNA matched the DNA collected from the K-bar. When, though? When did you find that? Specifically, exactly. But when? How did you obtain that? After he was arrested. All the things in the PCA led to dead ends. He wasn't on your, he's not in your pings, which involved the FBI. The FBI messed up on the car. Everything that's fucked up in the PCA belongs to the FBI. How about that? First, the IgG information is not material to the preparation of the defense. How do you know that? If they're going to, somebody killed 4 people. Multiple people may have killed 4 people. How do you know that the IgG information is actually not material to prep for? Especially when you're going to be talking about if it's not Bryan, then who? What if Bryan had a horrible relationship with one of his cousins? You know what I mean? Oh God. It's a sheath, guys. It is not the knife. It's a sheath. How are you going to feel then if there's no blood in the car? If there's no victim blood in that car? Mainly because he cleaned it. After talking to Scott Roeder, he says it's way harder to clean up blood than it is to plant blood, in quotes. Ready? Yep. He said, I was under the impression that they had, they have a bunch of evidence. And I said, well, Scott, what if there is not blood of the victims in that vehicle? He said, well, I'll tell you this, it's a lot harder to clean up blood than it is to plant blood. I said, really? He's like, yeah, especially if you have access to the blood. So if it comes back that there's no blood in the car of the victims and there's none of this, all this, cleaning products and bleach and whatever else it would have tested for, if none of that's present, how do you feel? Coffin gobbler. Christopher, you just made my day with that. Coffin gobbler is on right now talking about what? Oh my gosh, that just made me laugh. Thank you for that. Sorry. Oh God. First of all, now it was completely covered. It was under half of under Maddie, and then the other half was under the comforter. They have to throw that in there because what I'm telling you, what's coming here is that this sheath is not present on any body cams. The body cams. Love you. You're welcome. Oh, God, that was so funny. Coffin Gobbler. Get over here, Coffin Gobbler. I could just see that on an episode of Office. The strength of the evidence against defendant in terms of DNA evidence depends upon the confirmation, the result, okay, from the STR DNA analysis between defendant's DNA profile and the DNA recovered from the sheath. But this is what I'm saying is, how did you obtain this? Okay, how are you able to get that confirmation? In order for you to confirm, you needed that swab of him. How did you get the swab of him? You used what? You used the garbage, didn't you? That's what you wrote, Payne, in the PCA, that you used the garbage. So if you obtained, how was that garbage obtained? I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy. So was the DNA from under that sheath clasp also transferred to the nightgown? I don't know. Nightgown. We don't know if she was naked. We don't know what anybody was wearing. Let's see. As explained further below, the state intends to introduce the STR DNA analysis at trial and does not intend to enter any evidence pertaining to the development of a SNP profile or the tree building process for inculpatory purposes. Well, can you include the FBI agent that coughed up Bryan Kohberger? The state has disclosed or will disclose the information it has related to the STR DNA analysis conducted in connection with this case. Here's the analogy. The tip that came from the IgG process is no different than any other types of technology, quote unquote, hits that put law enforcement on the trail of a suspect. See United States versus Johnson. For example, in Johnson, law enforcement recovered a suspect's DNA from a ball cap left at the scene of a bank robbery. Law enforcement ran the DNA profile through CODIS, which resulted in multiple hits, including the defendant. Well, but the DNA that they had, though, when they put it into CODIS, didn't hit multiple times, didn't even hit one time into CODIS. Okay? A scientist narrowed down the hits to the defendant, and law enforcement confirmed it was the defendant's DNA after requiring a swab from the defendant. How did you eliminate all the other hits on that? Were they able to prove that the hat was the defendant's? Because if they said they had multiple hits on that hat, the defendant moved to compel the other CODIS hits from the government, but the court denied this motion. The court explained that the DNA evidence material to the defense was the direct comparison between the DNA on the hat and the DNA taken directly from the defendant. What if there's multiple DNA? The fact defendant was first identified as a possible suspect based on a database search simply does not matter. Here, the IgG information, like the initial CODIS hits in Johnson, is not material to the preparation of the defense because it only shows how defendant was first identified as a possible suspect. They totally underestimate the YouTubers, e.g. Lana, etc. Thanks, appreciate that. Did this guy appeal his case, Mr. Johnson over here? I'm just curious. I would think that all the other hits it could be possible. How could that not be exculpatory? Oh, they're not. Moreover, now they're going to be talking about the expectation of privacy, which is the sheath was abandoned. The sheath was abandoned. What if the sheath was planted, not abandoned? Again, a defendant cannot prove a violation of the Fourth Amendment without first showing he or she had a reasonable expectation of privacy in the place searched. I mean, I agree he does not have a reasonable expectation of privacy. Okay, so here, who voluntarily provided their own DNA to, now this would be one of my arguments. What if, so I need this list so that I can ask these family members, hey, did y'all provide your DNA to 23andMe or any ancestry, whatever? Did you guys ever do this? Did you guys ever sign anything? Does it say that you cannot be, what's the deal here? I'm just curious. I'm all about learning. Show me DNA in the car or under the victim's fingernails, then I'll start listening, says Kate. That's all I've been asking for is show me the victim's. I mean, this was so bloody. It was such a mess. It was so hurried. I mean, unless Bryan got butt ass naked and was driving all over, not just, he just didn't drive home, but he was driving all over, Genesee to this, to that, with his, helicoptering, bouncing on, just butt ass naked in his car. At some point, what pulls over, and I mean, I don't know. But I would just, you would think that that's your smoking gun is blood from the victims in that vehicle. I mean, right? How would Bryan be able to explain that? I mean, my personal opinion is that you have a crime scene that has been so contaminated. All right. The crime happened between, I'm going to go ahead and say, 3 and 4. We'll go 3 and 4:25. And 911 isn't called until noon. Now you have people that are saying that they knew about this at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, how does that play all into who had access to the house, who was there, who could have put this sheath, why would they put it there? And I don't know. It's Atlanta. I got a question. If Brian bought a K-bar knife on Amazon with sheath, I mean, who would do such a thing? But does he have it in his possession, the knife and the sheath? Boom. So you're basically saying if he still has that knife and sheath, boom. Well, yeah. What if he bought two so that he could go boom? But didn't buy it. Didn't buy the one on Amazon. I mean, I just think that for somebody that knows how the digital world works, you're going to buy your murder weapon, get it sent through Amazon. Just wild. Wild to me. Drive around, be seen on all these cameras, take your own car. Let's take a look here. Second, the state did not rely on the IgG information to establish probable cause for the defendant's arrest. Did not. So that's my huge question mark right there is I believe that they did. It's in Payne's probable cause. But what they're going to argue is they're going to say that what? ISP had this profile. We got into the trash. Okay, yeah, I get that you got into the trash and that you have this. That's exactly what you're saying. And that you use this, you put this in order to obtain your search warrant, which was that Brian's dad could be a possible, or is the biological father of the hit on the sheath. But how did you obtain Brian's dad's DNA? How did you obtain the garbage? Was that legally obtained? Because that was used in the search warrant. I can't wait to see these dates. I cannot wait to see these dates. Show me these dates. I'm a date person, and this just like totally is a bunch of crap. Because as soon as you give me these dates, I'm going to tell you. I mean, I already know in my head how it has to happen date wise in the moment that it's off on the dates and that certain things should have been happening. When did the FBI interview Dylan? When did Dylan give her statement about bushy brows? Was it before or after the FBI already had the name Bryan Kohberger? I want to know when Dylan said bushy brows. 5'10", bushy brows. I want to know the date on that. That's going to be everything. Again, welcome everybody to Truth and Transparency. Thank you guys for being here. You guys are fabulous. It's saying that they did not present any of that stuff, by the way, that none of this went to the grand jury. So did not present the IgG information to the grand jury and has no plans to present the IgG information for which a protective order is sought as evidence at trial. Well, we know that you couldn't present anything like that to the grand jury. You don't have it. What do you mean? You mean you didn't present the fact that you didn't present the family tree that said Bryan Kohberger, right? I know I would want to see that as like, I'd be like, hey, excuse me, how did you do all this? Instead, the state has relied on and will continue to rely on the STR DNA analysis comparing the defendant's DNA. You did not have that. You did not have the defendant's DNA to the DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. You didn't have this until you were able to get his arrest. You wouldn't have that. The only way that I believe that they were able to obtain from Judge Megan the arrest of Bryan Kohberger was to have this claimed DNA on the sheath. And I think that's why and Taylor's like, I want to see all these denied requests, because how many times did you attempt to arrest Bryan Kohberger, until you guys realize, like, okay, listen, we need to match this DNA. So if they're saying that we're just going to continue to rely on this, but you didn't have this until after you arrested him. You didn't have a swab of Bryan Kohberger's DNA. That did not happen. You only got that because you were able to arrest him. Hopefully I'm making sense with that. I think it's just invaluable. It's just, how did they get to Bryan Kohberger? How did they arrest Bryan Kohberger? What are the ties to Bryan Kohberger to this case? Third, the documents and tangible objects encompassed in the IgG information were not obtained from defendant, and defendant has no property interest in them. To the extent the DNA on the K-bar knife sheath once belonged to defendant, he abandoned that DNA when he left it at the crime scene of a quadruple homicide. What if it was planted? Did he abandon it then if it was planted? I would say that he did not abandon it if it was planted. Defendant has never had a property interest in the records that reflect the SNP profile developed from the DNA on the K-bar knife sheath, nor has he ever had a property interest in the information gathered. I think that he would have an interest in the information gathered because that's what gave the tip. You don't have the name Bryan Kohberger without this gathering of information. So I think that would be of interest to Bryan Kohberger as to how you went about gathering all of this. In short, none of the IgG information the state seeks to protect came directly from the defendant. No shit. It came from the fucking FBI, who didn't back up any of their work. Rule 16b5 does not require the disclosure of the IgG information because the IgG information is not the result of a scientific test or experiment. If anything, the state would have one of the detectives testify at trial only that they received a tip pointing law enforcement to defendant. Oh my God. Oh my God. How? The state reserves the right to present the IgG information at trial if the court requires the state to disclose the IgG information to the defense. This rule does not require the state to disclose what law enforcement does with the results or reports. Moreover, a process, procedure, or investigative technique is not a scientific test or experiment. Merely because it involves the comparison of information or objects or requires the use of logic or reason. But again, you just have to have one of these things. It just has to meet one of these requirements. So they just have to find one of these to argue. Okay. And you go after one, you go after the best one that you have, and you drill it. But I mean, you're allowed to make arguments on all of these, but why didn't they just do the? I don't understand. Rule 16b5 does not require the state to disclose how the SNP profile was used. And the genealogy the FBI conducted based on the DNA information does not constitute a scientific test or experiment. The FBI submitted defendant's SNP profile to one or more of the genetic genealogy services and were able to view potential relatives, guys. That's it. And access starting with those potential relatives, the FBI engaged in traditional genealogy to put together a family tree that could lead them to the suspect, guys. Well, have they never done this before? Have they never thought this would ever be asked of them how they got this? Putting together the family tree required the FBI to review sources such as social media, publicly available databases, subscription-based databases, vital records, census records, and historical newspapers. None of those actions can accurately be characterized as a scientific test or experiment. I think all of this is science. Isn't this the whole fucking nature of science? The whole damn thing's science. It's just wild. Exactly. It's exactly what they did. It's here's the name, here's this is who did it, you guys. But we can, I mean, and like I said, even if Bryan is the guilty party, why didn't you protect your work on how you had to prove all this, knowing that you couldn't expose an informant and that you didn't want to go that route? Wouldn't you be extra guys, come on, the reason that this person knows this and that they were there or something like that. I mean, whatever the case may be, on your game. But all this shows me is that the only people right now that I see being sloppy is law enforcement. Because it shouldn't be like this, if you ask me. There should be all this evidence pointing to just this creepy piece of shit, and it should be your T's crossed, your I's dotted, and why it's not is. And I just think when you have so many people working on a case, guys, people don't really realize this, but that's how stuff falls through the cracks. You got different people working on things, but then who's getting it all and who's putting it all together? And wait, who are these people? I don't even know these people. We have all these FBI agents, all these ISP people, all these Moscow people. How do you do all of that? You know, the debriefing, the getting the information, and And here, if you have all these people doing this, then why couldn't Chief Fry communicate with the damn families? What is he doing? If all these other people are doing all this crap, what's Chief Fry doing? Well, I know what he wasn't doing. I don't know. I just look at this. It's disheartening because you want whoever did this. And I don't know how anybody can read this and be like, honestly, all you have to say is, well, damn, somebody messed up. That's all you have to say is, well, somebody messed up. Because that's what happened here. Somebody messed up. What do you mean you didn't back up all this work? Yeah, go fly a kite. $250,000 spent on consulting. I'll take a look at that. Oh my God, $500,000 in consulting fees probably went to the people like Banfield. You guys are cracking me up today. Oh God. Holy moly, look at her. All right, guys. God, I need to get into the consulting business. Let me know if you guys need anybody to consult on your next documentary. If you want me to look over some facts, if you want me to, put together some detailed timelines, let me know. I can consult. Let me see that car with that blood. Where's my favorite line, though? Okay, look at this. The state seeks to protect hundreds of innocent civilians from having their personal information, including their names, birth dates, and familial connections. All right, guys, I'm going to pull it up. Let's look at Bryan Kohberger's dad's information. Let's take a look here. Okie dokie. Okay. Mr. Kohberger, let's check your family tree out here. Should have had you your own. You guys, they don't have. Who are these hundreds of people? The Kohbergers are not, like, there's not that many people. Like, let's see. Oh, Bryan C. Kohberger. There he is. Michael, Amanda. Let's see what else we got here. Michael Kohberger. Let's see if Michael Kohberger. Michael Francis, get over here. Michael, Amanda, Bryan. Yeah, I can't. They ain't got no hundreds of relatives, guys. I just looked. Good luck with all that. I mean, how far are we going back to all of these dead people? Dead people can't kill people. Who are these hundreds of people? Instead, the state seeks to protect hundreds of innocent civilians. They're all his family, including their. We don't need they don't want that. This isn't going to us. We don't want this. Similarly, the family tree created by the FBI cannot accurately be characterized as reports or memoranda made by a police officer or investigator. Then what are they? And the FBI has indicated that they did not create reports or memorandum as they conducted the genealogy. So were they getting created by like, okay, don't take any notes, and then none of this. Even if notes jotted down by the FBI agents or the family tree constituted reports or memorandums, as explained above, those records are not in the possession of the prosecuting attorneys. You never got that from them? Let's build a family tree. I mean, you guys. All right, well, here it is. At least you guys got a nice jump on it as far as all of this goes. The process used to collect IgG information required gathering information from several informants. Wait a second. Including the services guys. And indirectly from the relatives of defendant who hit on the SNP profile. Oh, for fuck's sake. Pursuant to Rule 16, disclosure must not be required for an informant's identity unless the informant is to be produced as a witness. I told you guys. Oh my God, no. Oh, God. Let's build that tree. There you go. Wait, since when does law need a warrant to obtain your trash, depending on where the trash is? What do you mean? People just can't go into your trash. They didn't have a warrant yet when they obtained the trash. If the trash wasn't abandoned and it was on their property, that might be questionable. Why didn't they use the trash in the other two warrants? Oh, God. This is just wild. This is the wild trashy behavior. Sorry. Oh, man. We already went through the whole trash thing thanks to Miss Nola. Look at her. Sorry about that, guys. So we got informants, guys. Told you. We got informants right there. The state has no intent of presenting the IgG information for which a protective order is sought as evidence at trial, which means none of the IgG informants will be produced as witnesses at trial. The non-disclosure of this information is consistent with the state's privilege to refuse to disclose the identity of a person who has furnished information relating to or assisting in an investigation of a possible violation of law to a law enforcement officer. I don't understand how that could be that you assisted. You exploited. They consider that assisting. So guys, mark that down. If you go and submit your DNA to the 23andMe, you are assisting as an informant. Yep, that's when they can do it. If the trash is at the street. They said that they went on the Kohberger's property to get that, though. He has the right to face his accusers. I know. This is going to be so interesting. You are snitching. I think if it's on your property, I don't think people can go on your property. That'll be interesting. We'll see. See how it all flows out. But here you go. This is where this is the privilege that this is where privilege comes in. So watch the beginning of the video and you'll see why all of this matters. Mm. Wow. You wonder why none of this was put in the PCA. All right, guys. Take care. I'll see you guys soon, man. Hundreds of relatives, family trees. Yeah, they ain't got no family. There's none of that happening. This family is not big. All right, guys. Take care till next time. Be kind to one another. On the way out, make yourself known. Thumbs it up, thumbs it down. You have an opinion. Make yourself known. Also, the lawyer that you know, he did a quick 58-minute video breaking down stuff as well, and he thinks that there's going to be a hearing about this, and I gotta agree with him there. Love a man with a brain and some eye candy to go with it. Until next time, guys, take care.